Hello everyone, and welcome to the first in a new series of interviews in the lead up to our upcoming event, ESF Europe 2022, the European Energy and Sustainability Forum, which will be held in Berlin this coming March. My name is Stefan Chapman. I am Vice President at Euro Petroleum Consultants. We are an independent consultancy in oil, gas and petrochemicals, and we are also the organisers of ESF Europe, the only event dedicated to downstream decarbonisation and sustainability. Today, I'm very honoured to be joined by one of ESF's keynote speakers and sponsors, Mr. Roeland Baan, President and CEO of Haldor Topsoe. With ambitions to be the global leader within carbon emission reduction technologies for both the chemical and refining industries, we're delighted to be able to catch up with him today ahead of the conference and to discuss some of the key topics facing our industry in its journey to a more sustainable future. So Roeland, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you for taking the time to come talk with us today. I hope you and everyone at Haldor Topsoe are doing well, especially in these difficult times.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you for the invite. Happy to be here. And yes, it's still challenging times, especially with Omicron now mixed into the mix. But we are doing okay. I won't say it's fully under control, but as much as can, we are going through a decent patch.
That's good to hear. I think everyone's doing their best, and hopefully we'll be able to see the end of this pandemic very soon. If I can start by looking at our industry today, we know there is a clear focus and a clear drive towards decarbonisation. With this in mind, I'd like to begin by simply asking if you could tell us a little bit more about how Haldor Topsoe is helping your customers in reducing carbon emissions from their chemicals and fuels, and also what makes Haldor Topsoe and your technologies unique.
Right. This can be long and short. I'll try to get it sort of in the middle. So we are traditionally we're an 80-year-old company, traditionally catalyst science-based surface science. But we have, as a company, over literally our entire history, always spent about 10% of our revenue on R&D, and on top of that, we always have been tackling societal issues, acid rain, hunger crises through better fertilizer technologies, etc., etc. So we have actually already from the 80s been working on technologies to fight climate change, including, for instance, in 82 we started with fuel cells. So as a result, we have a whole slate of technologies and solutions in our portfolio that can help our customers to decarbonize. And just to mention a few, our forays into the fuel cells have led to now having a state-of-the-art proprietary SOEC-based green hydrogen process through electrolysis that we are commercializing already. We have a few of them in the market. We are now in the second generation. We have announced that we will build a production facility of 500 megawatts a year to produce these electrolyzers. So that is only one thing. But we believe that the decarbonization is much wider. Hydrogen is a step. It's a sort of a, we call it, it's almost the crude of the future, right? It's the feedstock of many other things. It's not the ideal thing to transport energy with. So we have as well the technology to from hydrogen get into green ammonia, e-methanol, which are energy carriers that are far more efficient, where there is already infrastructure in place. You can ship it around, and very often green hydrogen will not be produced where it's consumed. Think about Middle East or Australia or what have you. So that is another thing where we can help. Where we already are extremely active is in the renewable fuels. At the moment, the biggest chunk of investment into renewable fuels is in the US. It probably represents 90% of the world's investment in renewable fuels, and especially renewable diesel. And we actually have in that market about an 80% market share. And the next, call it frontier, is sustainable aviation fuels, where again through the renewable route, the bio route, we are very active with our customers to develop projects to produce the sustainable aviation fuel. So a lot of what we do is focused at the hard-to-abate sectors. Same goes, for instance, for marine shipping fuels, methanol, from e-methanol, where we are in a project with a few other partners, to methanol from biomass, where actually you achieve a negative footprint because you avoid the methane getting into the air. And then last but not least, we have a few, let's say, less mature things. We're working on sugar to plastics. So crack sugar into a monomer that you then can use to produce plastics. We have a pilot plant up and running. We are in a joint venture or in a cooperation agreement with Braskem to do that. Very, very promising. And another one is battery materials, where we have a total novel cathode material that promises to have high energy density, no rare earth metals, and relatively cheap to produce. So these are a few of the things that we're working on. And what makes us unique is that we are probably the only company in the world that has such a broad slate of solutions. I would say the big advantage that we have is that we have everything under one roof. The big drawback that we have is that we have everything under one roof. It makes it difficult to really get your message across and get your focus right.
Thank you very much. It's great to hear so many different and interesting developments at Haldor Topsoe. And also really interesting to hear that it's a natural progression, that this did not start 10 years back, or this journey, this energy transition, and also the with climate change you were mentioning in the early 80s. So it's great to hear. If we keep our focus on technologies, we know that we're looking to accelerate the development, the scale up, and also the deployment of commercial low carbon technologies. This is what we're looking to do at present. In your opinion, what is currently holding back the industry today? And also, what role does collaboration play or will play in moving things forward?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is not the market. The market is there, demand is there. I think it's the supply constraint that we have. And the supply constraint has several origins. One of them, of course, is the maturity of technologies. If you take electrolysis, you could say it is very mature when you look at alkaline, but it's not at scale. And if you look at PEM and SOEC, of course, it is less mature. As a result, costs are pretty high, and that goes for many other solutions as well. I'll get back to that. So one of the biggest, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? In order to get your cost down to a level that the green premium is disappearing, you need to have scale and fast. But in order to have scale and fast, you need people who actually either are prepared to take the hit or are being compensated for the hit, and you need investors that are prepared to take the risk. So you need capital as well. And all that is happening. You see that here and there, for instance, in the US, going back to renewables, the system there is geared to give sort of subsidies if you produce renewable diesel or renewable jet, to the extent that actually it becomes totally competitive with the fossil-based fuels. And as a result, you see investment going up, funds are pouring money into it, etc., etc. So that is one of the things that is needed in order to get to that scale. The other thing is collaboration, what you mentioned. This is not something that anyone can do alone. What we notice is that not only do markets differ from our traditional markets, competitors differ as well. Investors differ. The traditional players are not necessarily the ones that are at the forefront of this. You see developers coming up that are venturing into this market because they believe in it and they believe that there is a future in it, that do not have the technological knowledge and need support. So this is a world where it is a lot about your ecosystem that you build with partnerships across the value chain and across industries, from the financial industry to the energy industry. Last but not least, what is a hurdle? A hurdle is, I think, as well, that still the fossil drive is very big, and it's logical. The majors are sitting on large quantities of reserves that, if they are not being developed, are going to be stranded assets. So there's an incentive to develop these assets as soon as possible and extract as much as possible in the short term, and that's not a hell bargain.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to get the balance right when we're looking also at the future energy mix. So I think we've got some interesting times ahead of us. As part of our preparation for ESF conferences, we have what we call advisory meetings, where we have our advisors discuss many key topics, and that helps shape the conference. During our ESF advisory meetings, one of the most difficult challenges that was identified by our advisors is that the legislation in Europe is not developing consistently enough nor coherently enough. Do you believe that the different policies that we see today on the table today are aligned, are supportive, helpful, or are they in competition? And looking ahead also, how do you believe regulation can better support the acceleration of this transition that we are in?
Look, it's easy to say that they are not completely aligned, and they're not. But then again, no one knows what the energy mix of the future is going to be, right? So you see, coming from a couple of years ago, a big emphasis on the hydrogen economy. But slowly you see as well creeping in the notion that hydrogen is not the answer. Hydrogen is one of the answers and is a building block in the whole system. So if you build a policy on hydrogen alone, you're doing the wrong thing. But it's not surprising. I mean, we had a discussion, for instance, during the COP26 in a panel about hydrogen in the Far East, and especially hydrogen produced in Australia and then to Japan and Indonesia and what have you. And it's not surprising that there the whole discussion comes, okay, so does it make sense to create a hydrogen market that is not there? There's no standardization of hydrogen on what is green, what is blue, what is white. You have all the colors now without really standards to it. To create a commodity trading market for that is difficult. Whereas you have a market, for instance, for ammonia, and you have in Japan specifically utilities who are looking at actually firing their power plants with ammonia. So with all this thinking in a flux, it is very difficult for governments to come up with the right policies. I think one of the advantages of what you are doing and what an ESF can do is that it can help galvanize that thinking into a coherent plan. So that's one thing. I think there is a lot of goodwill there, and especially if you look at the public-private cooperation and think about things like breakthrough energies or the Catalyst initiative and what have you. Those are really strong supporters of it. So I think we're going the right direction. Two things, of course. One, and this sounds a bit critical, which I don't want to be, but it makes it difficult. One is if you look at the available funds, for instance, from the EC, they're fantastic. They're in the right spirit. They are helping to bring new technologies to scale, etc. But in order to get access to these funds, you go through such a long process that if by the time you would actually get a yes or no on it, your opportunity is gone. The cycles are much faster. So something has to be found there. Another thing is more on regulations. I think we have to be far clearer on the cost of carbon. It's amazing how as polluters we are always paying, right? We pay for our trash being removed. We pay for everything. Polluters pay. The only exception is fossil fuels. We hardly pay for the carbon that clearly has tremendous costs, social and environmental, economic, and no one pays for it. So it's a subsidy on fossil that needs to be taken away in order to erode that green premium, because it's a false premium. It is because there is a de facto subsidy on fossil fuels. And that's something where there's still a long way to go, I think.
Yeah, I think we're at the beginning of the journey. I think it's, like you said, it's very important to have clear, concise, and sometimes try to simplify the regulations and also access to the funds to make this innovation and development possible. We know we've been hearing recently, not even recently, in the last few years, Haldor Topsoe is definitely a leading voice in this energy transition. And it was recently announced that you have signed a 45 million loan agreement with the European Investment Bank, and this is to support research to drive green energy transition. If possible, could you tell us a little bit more about the R&D that will go into developing new catalysts, new catalytic technologies, and also innovative hydrogen technologies?
Yeah, so I alluded to it a little bit. We still today and throughout our history we reinvest about 10% of our revenue in R&D, which is I would say is probably pretty exceptional in our industry. We have in our R&D group we have 450 highly educated and capable people poring over everything. One of the things that I think is unique is that we let our scientists do basically what they like to do. We don't curtail them too much. Some things go nowhere. Some things go on the shelf and stay there for years and suddenly become relevant. But as a result, we have this tremendous creative power in the group of 450 people. So it's difficult to say where this 45 million is going to go. It is really, I was talking about, for instance, our SOEC. We are now in generation 2, which is an enormous scale up of where we were just a few years ago. We are currently putting a lot of money into how do you industrialize that. So we have a cell that works, we have a stack that works, but how do you make that into a 100, 200, 400 megawatt plant? What's the efficient way? How do you? So there's a lot of research going into that. I mentioned the cooperation with Braskem, where we use sugar as a basis in order to produce a monomer. That is the pilot plant is running satisfactory, and we're now going into the next phase. So there's a lot of money necessary for the development of that. But then there are more fundamental things as well. As I said, on the battery materials, we are still doing a lot of work. We have a number of, if you talk about e-fuels, we have a number of technologies that we are still developing, and a few that we know that work, and we are now bringing to the point where we can get them either in a pilot or in a small industrial state. So one of them is our ESMR, which is a unique process in our e-methanol production, where you literally are completely independent of any fossil sources. So really exciting stuff going on.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really great to hear about that insight into the world of R&D, the different routes, the avenues, the innovation. Like you say, some will be used in the near future, others maybe in 10 years' time, but it's great to have kind of a view into that world that we don't always see. Looking at our industry, we know that our industry is continually looking to improve operations in terms of performance, in terms of reliability, flexibility, and also efficiency. When looking at decarbonisation, what do you believe are the decarbonisation low-hanging fruit and incremental steps that are still available to the industry through efficiency improvements?
Yeah, I mean, that's an extremely difficult question. I don't think there's that much low-hanging fruit. If you look in the chain, first of all, we need a lot more green power. But that is not very low-hanging. We are running out of space. So you now get into the realm of offshore floating wind, which is not an easy one, and is an early technology. We here in Denmark are working on these energy islands, where we are now talking about should those energy islands include electrolyzers on the island, and maybe even ammonia loops and what have you. But I wouldn't call that low-hanging fruit. These are projects that take years. Probably the lowest hanging fruit is again back to renewable fuels, where there is still a lot of capacity to turn biomass into green renewable fuels, be it diesel or jet, or through another technology that we have. It's called Pure Step, where you through pyrolysis or hydrothermal treating, you get a dirty crude, put it through our technology, and you have a drop in bunker fuel, for instance. So those are things that are available today, and that we can accelerate. I'm always getting a little bit disappointed when, for instance, I look at SAF in Europe, that we have a target set by the Commission of, I think it's 4% of SAF mixed into the jet fuel by the end of this decade. And I think that's nothing. We are already today in renewable diesel. We're producing over 2 million tons a year. By the end of this year, we're closer to 6 million tons a year through our technology. So it's not that big an issue. The ambition is not there sufficiently either, in my view.
We have, I think, time for one final question. Looking ahead to the conference, what do you hope that the discussion from a conference like ESF will help the industry to achieve over the next 12 months? How can we help?
Well, I think it's first of all, you get the right people together. You get people again across the value chain that are sitting there and exchange ideas, can listen to each other. So I think alignment is one thing, and we need alignment. Going back to your earlier question, if you want to have policies that are coherent, there needs to be alignment on where we're going. So this conference will be an important contributor to that. It will provide transparency about what people are doing, and it will open doors to make those cooperation models, so that the partnerships that we need. This is something that is so big that we should forget about trying to keep it all for ourselves, right? As a company, for instance, you will not make a difference if you try to go that way. So this brokers as well, these partnerships, these cooperation models. I think it's a good tool as well for policymakers, because it enables them to keep a finger on the pulse. And it again, as I said, creativity, it helps to form ideas, and so I think it's extremely important, especially on that alignment side.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think sharing ideas, getting together, sharing experiences, talking things out, communication, I think, and collaborations are key. So thank you very much, Roeland. Brings us to the end of our chat today. It was a real pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you today. Thank you for sharing your insight, your expertise, and your experience on these key shaping industry topics. And we very much look forward to be able to continue the discussion at ESF Europe this coming March. So until that time, please stay safe and stay well.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and looking forward to seeing you in March.
Thank you very much.